There are 4 steps you can take to manage anxiety going into a game. But before we get into those 4 steps, it's a great thing to talk about where this anxiety comes from in the first place. Because if you don't know and understand where this anxiety comes from, then the 4 steps aren't going to be as effective. So when you're experiencing anxiety before a game, what do you think is actually causing this anxiety? And, to think about that and to answer that question better, I want you to imagine what it is you're actually worried about. Because anxiety is defined by worries. So what are you worried about? Are you worried about not playing well? Are you worried about getting benched? Are you worried about coach yelling at you? Are you worried about maybe your parents or the fans not thinking that you're a good player if you do mess up? If any one of those or anything else that has to do with the outcome, what's going to happen at the end of the game, if any of those are on your mind, that's the reason why you're experiencing this anxiety. We know that whenever you're experiencing anxiety as an athlete, your thoughts have traveled into the future, right? If those thoughts are in the future, thinking about what's going to happen by the end of this game, how am I going to perform? Am I going to make any mistakes? That's why you're experiencing this anxiety. It's really important to understand that because when we're working through these 4 steps, they're going to be about kind of reeling that attention back in and placing it into the present moment, because if you're more focused on the present, you're not going to be experiencing as much anxiety. But we also recognize that those outcome thoughts are going to lead to physical symptoms, those physical symptoms of anxiety that you feel before a game that are going to cause you to underperform. Now, speaking of underperforming because of anxiety, I've got another video that I linked right here that goes into detail on the 4 main reasons why you may be underperforming during games. So now, if your thoughts are traveling too much into the future, and this is going to cause physical symptoms, when we're talking about how to manage the anxiety, what we need to do is we need to work on, pulling that attention back in. And we also then need to work on calming yourself down and reducing those physical symptoms that we know can limit your performance. So step number 1 is going to be to let go and accept the anxiety. Now, why would we want to accept the anxiety? The anxiety is the very thing that we're trying to get rid of. Well, the reason is because the focus on the anxiety, once you start to experience anxiety, can often be what increases the anxiety you feel going into games. What I mean by this is, you kind of get anxious about being anxious because initially you're starting to think, how am I going to play? Am I going to make some mistakes today? I hope I play well. And so then you start to feel a little bit anxious. But you know that if you've ever experienced this anxiety before, it typically causes you to underperform. And so if you're feeling this anxiety and then you know that that causes you to underperform, what's going to happen? You're going to start worrying about the fact you're anxious because you know it's going to cause you to play worse. So now we start to see this cycle happen where you're worried about playing badly. You feel the anxiety. Now you're worried about the anxiety because you're worried about playing badly. And that anxiety just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And since we're talking about the foundational cause of anxiety being your thoughts and your thinking being too much in the future, we have to work on changing what you're thinking about. And we can't change what you're thinking about by trying to resist what you're currently thinking about. So that's why the first step is to just accept, and then we're going to work on letting go of the anxiety. And so as simple as it sounds, you can just say things like, I accept my anxiety. It's okay that I'm anxious. I can play well even though I'm anxious. But the whole point is just practicing to accept the fact that you're anxious right now. And then step number 2 is you want to turn your attention onto your breath. Now, this is where we're going to begin to see you pull that attention off of the outcome and place it back into the present moment. But we're also going to start seeing you reduce those physical symptoms of the anxiety. Whenever you're anxious, whenever you're nervous, if you can turn your attention to your breath, really focus on taking some nice deep breaths, that's going to reduce those physical symptoms. Because you know that if you've ever experienced performance anxiety, it comes with very shallow breathing and a rapid heartbeat. And so the best way to reduce those physical symptoms in the moment is to simply focus on taking nice deep breaths. And as you focus on taking those deep breaths, you are removing your attention off of the anxiety itself, and you're also removing the attention off of the worries in the future that are going to be increasing the anxiety that you feel. And then the third step is to remember some past successes. Now, remembering past successes means you go back and you start to remind yourself of some really good games that you've been playing recently. And an exercise that I always take athletes through when I'm working with them in one-on-one coaching is having them list out, maybe 5 or 6 really good past performances. And then they can just review these to themselves throughout the week so that they're fresh on their mind and there's something that they can just quickly go back to and remember as the game is beginning. Now, speaking of one-on-one coaching, if you are interested in a more personalized approach to improving your mental game, I put a link in the description for you to learn more. So remembering past successes is going to be a fantastic way for you to immediately boost that confidence. And we also, once again, are taking your attention off of those worries in the future. And then step number 4 is you want to repeat a mantra. Now, this mantra can honestly be anything that you choose, but you want it to be focused on keeping your attention on the game and what's happening now. I've used mantras with athletes that are in terms of their mindset, like play loose and excited, loose and excited. And they just keep repeating that to themselves to keep their attention on what they're doing. I've also used mantras that are more, in line with their physical skills and kind of a physical objective, like focus on the ball. Just focus on the ball. Or, if it's a baseball player or a softball player and they're playing defense, just repeating in their mind, I want the ball, I want the ball, I want the ball. The main idea behind this is that we're using a mantra that is, going to either instill the mindset that you want as you're playing, or it's a mantra that's going to help keep your focus on the objectives that you need to be focused on to play well. But no matter what you're saying to yourself, what's really happening is that you're taking your attention off of those worries. So you're not allowing yourself to begin thinking, what's going to happen at the end of this game? Am I going to play well here? Am I not going to play well? Because you're fully keeping your attention on that mantra. So you're kind of distracting yourself, but in a good way. Now, performance anxiety before games can very quickly lead to the fear of failure. As you worry about what's going to happen, you begin to fear making mistakes. So if you've also experienced some fear of failure while you've played, I've linked another video right here that goes into detail on how you can work to overcome the fear of failure going into games by using specific sports psychology pre-game exercises. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training.